are you doing today? We are the English 125 Art Squad. I'm Evan Brickner.
And I'm Brian Fagel.
And I'm Ethan Tannenbaum.
And I'm Joe Oliveri.
And we are here to tell you about art.
We will show you how the University Musical Society,
UMS,
and the University of Michigan Museum of Art,
UMA,
portray the human condition, mankind's lifelong journey filled with love, despair, and everything in between. Also, we will show how art connects the individual to his culture and the world in which he lives.
Ancient paintings on cave walls from thousands of years ago depict man's longing to capture the buffalo to satisfy his hunger. They reveal his and his culture's dependence upon hunting to survive. Thousands of years later, the Greek utilized art in a different form, through mythology and theatrical performances, in order to demonstrate their fear of the gods, chronicle riveting stories, and teach moral lessons. In modern times, the metropolitan skyscrapers are a new form of art. They reflect the modern world's innovation and ingenuity. In addition, they depict a city's prosperity and success. These are just a few examples of how art reveals individuals and their link to their culture and the surrounding world. The various art forms at UMA and UMS highly demonstrate these profound insights.
UMA's first ever official artifact is a statue of Nydia, a riveting character in Edward Bulwer Lytton's 1834 novel, The Last Days of Pompeii. Nydia's story is one of tremendous and overwhelming love, yet unfortunate despair. In short, her beloved Glaucus fails to return her love, and she ensues to jump into the sea and drown herself to death. This statue here shows us her quest to find Glaucus as she holds her hand up to her ear, restricted with blindness, hoping to make gains on her beloved. Nydia's forlorn expression illustrates to the viewer feelings of hopeless emotion. Her worn-out eyes, her declined eyebrows, her bent slouch greatly make visible to the viewer of her desperate struggle to capture love, a struggle that has been faced by many throughout the years. Her face, as with many other works of art, especially gives insight into the individual. I spoke with Pam Reister, an UMA curator, on this subject in particular.
That you should look at art just to understand people. You know, you can't really get it from, it could be reading too, because she's a writer, but to understand the past, look at the paintings that people made, look at how they lived, and not just, you know, what did they wear, but try to understand the faces that are in the paintings, you know. So there are poetic reasons, there are very practical reasons, cultural reasons.
Nearly every museum goer to identify himself with certain pieces of art because every culture is represented. The Buddhist shrine allows students observant of the Buddhist faith a chance to introspect and solace in front of the shrine. Just around the corner from here is a Hindu sculpture of the god Vishnu, and museum goers sometimes place coins next to it in order to express their faith unto Vishnu. Other pieces are a little less direct in connecting the individual. When I examined one of Jorg Seeland's wooden sculptures of two saints, Reister gave us a background story that told of Zanier's incineration during the Nazi regime. I drew upon my Jewish roots in order to relate to it. Like my ancestors, this piece stood the test of time.
Is a piece in UMA made entirely of AK-47s and other guns. Here, we see the impact that art has on the entire world, not just one individual or one culture. The piece originated from the Peace Arts Project in Cambodia and gives us insight into the turmoil that Cambodia has faced due to warfare. Cambodia has been stuck in the middle of many conflicts, and there have been many peace movements surging throughout their nation. This piece is a statement against war and strives to send a message to further the idea of world peace. It reveals the current state of our world, one that is highly entrenched in war and conflict.
You know, I recently attended a Japanese play called Complicite Shinkin. It gave tremendous insight into the culture in Japan during the 19th century. The atmosphere was very tense, and the stage was very dark throughout the play, and relationships among the characters were very formal and often uneasy. This gave the impression that Japanese culture was very rigid and austere during these times. Also, the two main characters were an aristocratic girl and her lowly servant boy. Her and her family treated this boy very poorly as they abused him for anything that he didn't do correctly. This revealed the strict separation between classes that existed during the 19th century in Japan. Also, music was a very big part of this play. The two main characters played the shamisen, which was a form of Japanese guitar. This emphasis on music paralleled the emphasis on music that existed during the 19th century in Japan.
One of the things we started to do in our program books a number of years ago was to put in these little boxes about, if this piece was composed in 1842, here were other things happening in 1842. And suddenly you start to see all of these big connections between what was happening in literature, what was happening in the visual arts, what was happening politically, and how all of these things kind of end up influencing each other.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I listen, it's also about making some of those larger connections to the world that we live in. And I know that sounds really lofty and maybe a little crazy, but it is really, you listen to Shostakovich and you read about, what was happening in Stalinist Russia at the time, and you can't help but hear those parallels in the music, and it kind of helps you understand more of what these composers were going.
I hope you learned many things about art at the University of Michigan. Goodbye.